And here's what they were accusing him of. They were accusing him, and you have to kind of go through the whole book to put all the pieces of this together. They were accusing him of sexual sin. They were accusing him of material greed. They were accusing him of being in the ministry for money and favors from women. They were accusing him of falsifying his apostolic credentials. They were accusing him of overestimating his ministry impact and effectiveness. They were accusing him primarily of having a secret, hidden life of shame. In other words, he was a phony, he was a hypocrite. He came on as if he was the servant of God and the man of God, but under the surface was this hidden, shameful, wretched, wicked life. That he was walking in craftiness. That is, he was a deceiver. That he was not true to the Word of God. He was adulterating it. I mean, that's the sum of it. That's the worst that could be said. That underneath the surface of this apparently godly, faithful proclaimer of the gospel, there was a secret, hidden life of shame. And he was nothing but a hypocrite. You know, there are people in the ministry for whom that is true. They're in there preaching and teaching, and under the surface there's a hidden life of shame. I just uncovered a pastor back in the Midwest who preached in his church for over 20 years. That means that he had probably people who were in that church when they were born, and they had grown into their 20s when he was there and gone through their life under his leadership. They found out the church for all those 20 years had been giving him money, and been giving him money because he had a desire to give money to poor families in the area as a witness for the church, and they gave him cash so he could give it to the poor families. They began to do a little bit of a study, and they found out that the poor families never got that, but the local prostitutes got it over a period of 20 years. Now that's a secret, hidden life of shame. He was exposed, and of course then immediately people who've sat under his ministry for 20 years retroactively go back and wonder, what in the world has this 20 years been if this man, without the power and influence of the Spirit of God, has been my teacher? Horrific things like that happen from time to time. And there are those who have a hidden life of shame, and you know that. You've experienced some things like that as well. Sometimes it's even your parents who, or somebody in your family who puts on a show for people in church, but underneath it's like the whited sepulchres full of dead men's bones. So they said that of Paul. I want you to see Paul's answer, chapter 1, verse 12, because I think this gets back to the core of what we're talking about here. 2 Corinthians 1:12. This is the heart and soul of the issue. Our proud confidence is this. Now, Paul says, look, I've got to answer these accusations. Now, I want you to understand, Paul is a humble man. We know that very clearly. It comes through everything he writes. He's a selfless man. He's a Christ-exalting man. He wants to do nothing but exalt Jesus Christ and Him crucified. When he asked him for his apostolic credentials, he says, I was beaten more than you. I was shipwrecked and all of that, stoned and left for dead. And he looked at his suffering as the true badge of his apostleship, because in it was the essence of his humiliation for the sake of the gospel. He was not a proud man. But he was willing to defend himself against false accusations because he didn't want people to believe what was not true and therefore discredit his ministry and therefore shut themselves off from the truth which he preached. So reluctantly, he hates this, and you see that all the way through this epistle. He hates to have to defend himself, but he will do it. He will do it. And how will he do it? I was flying across America, and one of the leading religious, evangelical, quote-unquote, preachers, TV preachers, sat down behind me on a jet, proceeded to drink too much and get to the point where he was inebriated. And he saw me and he knew who I was. And he, for whatever reason, didn't like me. And so he decided, in his lack of self-control, to let me know that. And he just unloaded on me. And I said to him, I said, well, this is very interesting that you are sitting there and talking to me, because I am right now writing a review of your book for Moody Monthly magazine. So maybe I could ask you a few personal questions and make sure I get this right. Well, that was a pretty stunning providential meeting. Well, then he launched into some furor and used some profane words at me. I went ahead and wrote the review, and it was published. Later on, about 2 weeks after this incident on the plane, I received a thick envelope, about that thick, from him, full of 15 letters written by everybody on his staff that knew him, telling me what a wonderful person he was. I work with this guy, and he is and it went on. I mean, paragraphs, 15 letters on different letterhead from all these different people in his organization. You know what? I didn't buy that. I didn't buy that. What is that? I saw what was in his heart. When he got under the influence, the real deal became manifest. So what's Paul going to do to defend himself? Is he going to say, here's 15 letters from my 15 buddies? You say I have a hidden life of shame? No, I don't. And here's 15 letters? No. Look at verse 12. Here's our confidence. The testimony of our conscience. Look, Paul says, I'm telling you, I've looked inside. And here's the testimony of my own conscience, that in holiness and godly sincerity, not in fleshly wisdom, but in the grace of God. In other words, this holiness and this godly sincerity comes by the grace of God, not by the wisdom of my flesh. But I am telling you, my conscience tells me that we have conducted ourselves in the world and especially toward you in a way that is holy and godly. Let me tell you something, folks. If you can't say that, you got a problem. You really have a problem, because it's only a question of time before that gets manifest. You're not able to say with Job, I have done a full examination, and I'm telling you, I am righteous as a man can be before God. If you can't say that, you have a serious problem, because you're losing the battle on the inside and it'll show up on the outside, because as you think in your heart, so you are. And if they come at you and they say you've got a secret hidden life of shame, if somebody came to you and pinned you to the corner and said, are there secret things in your life, shameful things that only you know about, that you're trying to cover, and so forth and so on, could you stand up with the Apostle Paul and say, look, my proud confidence is this, that my conscience tells me that I have conducted myself in the world, that means in the world outside the church when nobody's looking, and I have conducted myself in the church right with you in such a fashion that my conscience tells me I have conducted myself in holiness and godly sincerity, not by my own fleshly ability, but by the grace of God at work in me. There you have that's the safest place you'll ever be. And that's the highest earthly court. God is the highest heavenly court. The highest earthly court is conscience.